Hello. Hey guys, welcome to day 4 of Core Java workshop. Hey guys. Uh, Good evening to all. Can somebody respond that am I audible and is my screen visible to all? A quick response. Um, Somebody could respond. Like, mhm. Okay, okay. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll start. We'll start at 7:35. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Hmm. This will wait for like 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll start. We'll start with today's class. Okay. 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 So meanwhile, let me ask some of the questions. Meanwhile, we are waiting for the people to join in. Okay. So what were the two types of typecasting that we studied tomorrow? What were those? Hmm. What were the types of typecasting that we covered? Hmm. Anyone can say the answer in the chat. Meanwhile, we are waiting for others to join in. Okay, now tell me, what was the type of the typecasting that programmer has to do explicitly, right? Was it implicit or explicit? I'm just waiting for the answer. Then we'll start. So, okay, so let us quickly revise the things that we studied tomorrow. Sorry, yesterday, not tomorrow. So forgive me for that. So yesterday we started with the type of typecasting that was explicit, where we were trying to put the higher data types into lower data types, and we saw that that has to be explicitly performed by the programmer. And in the due course, we used to lose some of the information. There was a high chance that we are going to lose some of the information. Correct. So that was the thing. And then we moved on to some of the basic operators in which we studied about pre-increment, post-increment, and we understood the difference between these two, right? What is the effect of writing those two plus plus sign before the variable, and what was the effect of writing those two with plus plus after the variable, and how the values used to get assigned. And then we moved on to flow control, and we just studied about if. So today we'll continue the journey of the selection statements, and today we'll study about switch, and then we'll move into iterative statements. Okay, so we'll start with the switch case, and so let us just begin with the switch case. I assume that all the people are here. Okay, so let's start. So today we'll study about switch case. If you remember from the last class, the problem was that you had one if, then there could be multiple else ifs. Correct. We saw that we can write multiple else if. What if we have like multiple options there? What I'm saying is, let me open my list. Okay. So let us assume a scenario that you remember the syntax for if else. The syntax was something like this. There was if, and there was some condition, and then we had else if, certain condition, and this was the curly brace for it. Again, we had else if, and this else if will continue, and we'll have one else condition. If none of these satisfied, this is going to run. Correct. So, but we can have a better alternative that is called a switch case. So we have something called as switch and case. We'll study about this switch case, what it is and why do we use it and where to use it. Okay. So what happens in switch cases? So these are two reserved keywords, and we'll see how we use it. So basically, if you see the syntax, it is written as switch, and here we pass a label. What do we pass? A label. Okay. So inside this switch, and we have cases here. Case 1, case 2, and this goes on. And finally, we have something called as default. I'll give you an example to grasp it better. Let us say that what we are doing is we are trying to prepare a mark sheet for the student. What we are trying to do is we are trying to prepare a mark sheet based on the grades. Okay. So if you get like A grade, B grade, C grade, D grade, E grade. So if you get A grade, your marks is 90%. If you get B grade, you have marks as, let us say, 80%. If you have C, then you have got like 70%, D 60%, and E you have got 50% of the marks. Okay. So this is the thing that you're trying to prepare using this. So imagine a scenario, you have to write an if else statement, and let us say there is a default case where marks is less than 50%. This is my default case. Okay. So let us imagine that if you have to write a result displaying function for all these things, how many if else you are going to write, right? The first one will be if for this, then else if for this, and this will continue till here else if. You have to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 condition, and at the right you have to write the else condition, correct? So we have a better alternative for it. So what we are going to pass here is, so as for this, if you want to convert this into switch case, so the label that is being considered here will be this my grades. If you see, these all are characters, correct? So this grade will be my label here. And according to this, we will define the cases here. Like for example, if we get here case as A, we are going to execute this particular block that is written here. If the case is, let us say B, we are going to execute this particular block. If none of them is true, we are going to execute this default block. So this is how we use switch case. Okay. So I'll show you some more examples today for this so that the concept becomes very clear. Let me go to my note section now. If you see here on the screen, okay, so let me take this marker. Okay. So if you see this X here, this is my level on which these all cases are going to get determined. So after each case, we write some action that we need to perform. So whichever case is satisfied, we perform the action corresponding to that case. Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. So let us quickly go to an example, and I'll teach you some of the rest of the concepts in that particular example only. Okay, so I'm going here and let me just comment out some of the things that we did in the yesterday's class. Okay, so our objective is this. I'll write in comment that what we are trying to achieve here. So we are basically going to write a grade printer. Okay, we are going to write grade print, let us say percentage printer as percentage printer as per the grade. Okay. So this is what we are going to do. And it is defined as if you get A, you have got 90%. If you get B, you got 80%. If you get C, you got 70%. And similarly, it moves on till 50%. And then there is a default case as, let us say default case as fail. Default case as you fail. Okay, so I'll try to convert it here. So I'll write here like char my grade. So here I'll define my grade as of now A, and I'll keep on changing the values and I'll show you that how it is going to vary. So what I will do is I'll define a switch case over this my grade. So what we are going to see here is So what is the key that we are going to pass? This is my grade on which we are going to put this switch case. And what is the value? The first value that we are, if we get A, okay. So what should be the action? Okay, so as of now, I'll remove all this break. I'll explain that why this break is required. Don't worry. So if I get grade A, what I'm going to print here is my percentage is 90%. Okay. So similarly, we'll do for rest of the thing. Like this is my case B. And I'll take this same statement again. And then my grade is 80% case. And then we got case C. And then let me print. My grade is 70%. Correct. And let me put the final and the one case that is default. If the none of the things runs, we are going to run this. And what I'm going to write here is failed. Okay. Now, so what is my grade now? Let me put my grade as B here and let us see the logs. So see, there are 3 cases printed. Observe it very carefully. I'll teach you about the break. Why do we need that break? So if you see here, my percentage is 80, 70 and failed. All 3 ran. But what should I get? I must have got this, right? This is what we want. But what we got, all the cases after this B, because this B is satisfied. So what is wrong with it? Why didn't we get only this output instead of getting all these 3? So this is called as fall through. This is called as fall through. So what happens in switch is, if the condition is satisfied, all of this is going to run. So to prevent all these cases after the case which is satisfied, we need to put break there. Otherwise, it will what it is going to occur is fall through. So what we will do is, we will simply put break after each of the condition. This is, we put break in order to prevent fall through. So fall through occurs, I told you, fall through occurs when one of the condition is satisfied, all the one below that is going to run. So in order to prevent that, we need to put this break. Now, if I run this, you will see only my percentage 80%. So did you understand the difference between why do we need to put break and what is going to happen if I don't put break there? So if you don't put a break, what happens is the condition which is satisfied, after that the entire case will run. So in order to prevent that, we put break here. So this is the logic of putting the break after each and every case. If you don't put it, all the case after that particular case which is satisfied, everything is going to run. So we put this break in order to prevent the fall through. So did you understood fall through? Can I get like thumbs up or something to indicate that you have understood that? What is the importance of this break? I'm waiting for the reply and then I'll move ahead. So let me put some other case that is not covered here. Okay. So I'll put Z here and let us see the output, what happens. So if I put Z here, see, the default case is run. Why? Because neither my grade is A, neither your grade is B, neither it is C. Okay, if you see here, my grade, which is put here as label, and what it is searching for the case. It is searching for the case called as Z, which is not here. Here is A, B, and C, and the default. So A, B, C doesn't matches. So the default case, since all the A, B, C has not matched with this particular Z that is trying to pass, the default ran. Okay. So if I put here, let us say C, you'll see the logs. The third one is going to run. My percentage is 70%. So I guess you are now clear with switch case and why do we need this break, isn't it? Okay. So this was one more thing. Let me teach you one more detail about writing the switch case. So if you see here, what you put here in switch, it is a character, correct? My grade C, isn't it? It's a character. So what happens? Let me introduce one more case. Now the case is written as 1. And I want to print here something like I am an integer case. I am an integer case. Now let me run it. Now see the logs. Okay. So acha, it has took because this can be stored here. Why did it run? Because this C can be stored in integer. Correct. So I have to put let me put something smaller than that. Like let me just change this to, let me put here as, let me just convert this char to int, and let me put here my grade into percentage, right? And let me just remove it to 90, 80, 70, and instead of this case A, let me put here as no, let me put here as 2.5. Now I'll run it. Now you see the difference. I'm just trying to teach you the underlying the concept. So if you see here, cannot convert from double to int. Can you see the difference? The log, the error that is there on the screen. It is showing that cannot convert from double to int. Why? Because the case that you are trying to pass here in this switch, the parameter that is under the study is an integer, correct? And the case that you have defined here is a double. If you see here, this is something, this is of double. And you're trying to put a case that is of the type double, correct? So this is not permitted. If you define something that is under consideration in this switch, all the cases must have the underlying same data type that you have passed in this switch statement. All the cases must match with the same data type with the variable that is here under the consideration. Otherwise, you're going to get some exception here like this. So remember this. This is the thumb of the rule. If you're writing switch case, make sure that all the cases have the same data type as one that is put here in this key format. Okay. So this was all about switch case. So this is basically what we cover in switch case. Okay. So these are the things that you need to maintain. First thing that you need to take care of fall through, that you need to introduce break in order to prevent the fall through. Second, if none of the case matches, the default case is going to run. And you can have only one default case. You cannot have more than one default case. So remember that. The next thing is that whatever the cases that you define must have the same data type as you have passed in the key of the switch. So these are the things that you need to make sure in switch cases. So this was all about switch cases. Now we'll move to loops. So we'll let us learn about the iterative statements. Let me go to my board. No, not this, but this. So let me clear this. Okay. So now what we'll do, since when we covered if, else, and switch, okay, so they both were the selective about statements, right? They were giving you the options, which one is going to run, which one or not. Now the requirement is that, let us say I want to repeat some action and that must occur iteratively. I want to do some iterative process. Iterative process. For example, I want to print from 1 to 10. So what initially people do will, they will try to print 1 to 10, correct? But this is not what I want. I want to make some, I want to write just a single statement or a two-line statement, and this is going to do it. Something that has to repeat in cycle. Okay, so that is called as iterative process. So basically, for this iterative process, we have something called as loops. Loop. Okay, so I guess the name is very clear. Loop means something which keeps on revolving like this, correct? Which have end and start at the same point is called as loop. So basically, loop represents that something that keeps on revolving and revolving and revolving and revolving. So similarly, in programming, loop means we are trying to a statement, repeat a statement on and on and on. Okay. So how do we do that? So basically, we have three options for it. The first one is a while loop. Second one is a do while loop. And the third one is a for loop. So we'll understand the difference between all these three and the scenarios in which we should use it. Like when should we use while, when should you use do while, and when you should use for while. But remember that all the work that while can do can be done by do while, and all the work that do while can be done by for loop. So all these three can be used interdependently. So if you can write some logic using while, you can do it using do while also. If you try to write something using do while, you can do it using for, but they have been built for different purposes. I'll tell you the difference between all these three. Like I will give you some intuitive things so that you can directly think of which loop to use when. Okay. So these all three are basically for repeating statements continuously. Okay. So let us see the syntax for all these three and the use cases for all these three. Like when do we use it? So let me just switch back to my notes. Okay. So the first one that we are going to use is while. So I guess if you remember, the Hindi meaning of while is like jab tak, right? Until unless this one, while means jab tak ye condition true rahega, right? Until. Have you seen until the dawn or until the dusk, like jab tak raat na ho? Like we'll go for a movie. Like if you write something as while, if you try to focus on the meaning of while. So what does while means? While means jab tak, right? Just focus on the English meaning of it. While means until unless this is true. Jab tak ye hoga. So similarly in the programming world, while also have the same meaning, right? While. So the syntax for writing while is this. We write a while here, but let me just zoom in a bit. I don't know. I think this is very clear now. So if you see here, this is written here is while and then the condition. So until this condition is fulfilled, this logic is going to get repeated on and on and on. Okay. So this is the syntax for while. Here we write the condition. This has to be a Boolean value. The return type, or this has to be a Boolean, or if we write some statement here, that must return a Boolean value, because this is what it is going to check whether it is true or false. So until it is true, this particular condition which will be written here, this is going to repeat. This particular logic which is written here. I'll give you an example. Just hang on for a second. I'll give you a very simple example, very simple, so that you can understand the concept. So what we will do is we will try to print some value from, let us say, 1 to 10. Okay. So what I will do is I'll try to print some value from 1 to 10. So my objective is to print 1 to 10. So we will try to perform this using a while loop, and let us see how do we do it. So let us declare one variable int I is equal to 1. Since we have to print it, so I have declared a variable int I is equal to 1. So what I will do is, so here we are going to write the condition. This is the place where we write the condition. Okay, here I'll write the condition. And here I'll write the statement, which is going to keep repeating. Statement. Okay. So what I have to do is, I have to print. Oh, with it. system dot out dot print ln. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to print I. Correct. So since I have printed this I want the next I. Correct. Means if you see the logic, see the things very carefully. What we have done here, we have tried to print this I. Correct. And what is the value of I here? That is 1. Now, in order to print the next value, what should I do? I must increase the value of I by 1. Correct. So that it becomes the next one and it keeps on repeating. Correct. But when should I stop printing this? When? When? I have to print till 10. Correct. So this I should be less than 11. Did you understood that? I'll again repeat this. Don't worry about it. So let us follow this procedure again step by step. So we have to start printing, correct, values from 1 to 10. So what we did is we initialize the variable with I is equal to 1. So this was our step number 1. Step 1, initialize the variable. Because this was the first value that we are going to print, correct? Sorry for the typo. So here what we did is, second step was that we print the I. Since we have to print the next I, so we have to increase this I, correct? So what here? We increase I by 1. So what happens is, now see here. Now see, observe the thing steps first. So this was my step number 1. So here is step number 2. What it does is it checks whether I is less than 11. Why we are trying to do this? Because we have to print I is 1 to 10. I's value from 1 to 10, correct? So if as it crosses the value of 10, so what it will return? Is 11, if let imagine, for instance, imagine I is equal to 11. So is 11 less than 11? No, this will become false. So this particular statement will not execute, correct? But for any value which is less than 11, for any, imagine any value of I which is less than 11, let us say 2. So 2 is less than 11, this is going to return true, correct? So this particular thing will become true. So this loop is going to execute. So in this case, we'll print this I and again we'll increase the I to the next one. So I'll repeat this entire flow. Just observe it. So I try to like let me print some of the things. So it is printing and so let me print one more statement here so that you can understand it. So increased value of I. So I'll put here. So let me just put it a bit aside so that you can imagine the and clearly see the values. So I'll try to run this loop. Now just observe it. See the logs carefully, I'll tell you. See the first value, what was printed? I. So inside the loop, what we did, we try to increase the value. What it becomes? 2. Then the 2 was printed and the value was increased to 3. Then since 3, we again printed 3 and increased the value of 4. So this on carried forward till when? We printed the 10, correct? The increased value of I was 10. We printed 10 and then we increased the value to 11. And after, since the value becomes 11, see there is no output. So this was you are trying to print, right? So if I just comment it out, now if you'll see the things, you're going to see the exact output that we are trying to figure out, right? 1 to 10. Okay. So I'll explain this one last time that how we did it. So the first thing what we did is we tried to initialize this value since we were trying to print I 1 to 10. So we initialized with the first value, that is I. So here we write the condition at which this statement should not run. So what was the condition? The i's value should be less than 11. Why it should be less than 11? Because we want the value of I from 1 to 10. So once this value of I exceeds the value of 10, I must stop. So here the until unless this condition is true, or this action is going to get repeated. So at every step, what we do is we print this I and we increase this value of I to its next value. So at each step, this value is going to checked here. Okay. So let me just give you some insights about 1 to value. So initially here I is equal to 1. This is your step number 1. Step number 2, I is less than 11. So this returns true. So then we move on to here. That is step number 3. We print this I. And step number 4, the value of I becomes 2. Since here what was I? I was 1. Now at this step, what is I? I becomes 2. Correct. So we again move to here. We again check this condition. What is this? I is less than 11. Correct. So it again returns true. And again, these two statements are executed. And again, the value of I becomes 2. And once you increase it, it becomes 3. Okay. And these loops keep on continuing until I is 11. So once this I becomes 11, this particular condition will become false. And after that, this statement is not going to execute. So this is how while loops behave. This is a very common example, a very simple example to make you understand how does this while loop function. So let me go to let me be here only. So this is basically my entry control loop. If you see here, before entering into this execution statement, it is checking this statement, right? So this is basically my entry control loop. Entry control loop. So if you want to repeat an action on and on, this condition must be satisfied. If it is not satisfied, I am not going to run this on and on and on. Okay. So this is my entry control loop. Once you read about other loops, you will understand the difference, like why I'm saying that this is an entry control loop. Okay. So now let us go understand about some other loops. Let me go to this. So we studied about while loop. Okay. So we use it. We don't know the number of iteration in advance. Then this is the base loop, because here you are writing the condition and don't know how many times it is going to repeat. You have just tried to put the condition here. This is the thing. Okay. And here this condition must return Boolean value. If you try to return any other value, this is not going to run. Okay. So now the next loop we are going to study is do while loop. So what happens in do while loop is the statement which is written here runs once, whether this condition is true or not, doesn't matter. So this statement is going to run for one time, that is sure. Okay, this statement will run once, and after that, whether it is going to run or not will depend upon this while condition. So if this condition which is written here after this while, if it returns true, it is going to repeat again. So this is the thing. But it is going to run once, that is for sure. So I'll again repeat what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that inside this do, there are some statements. Okay. And this statement is going to run once, that is for sure. But it is going to repeat on and on, depends upon this while. The condition which is written beside this while, inside this B. So if it returns true, okay, whatever statement or condition is written here, if it returns true, the above statement will run once again. If it is not true, it is going to break. If it is again true, it will run once again. So I'll show you one more example of that. The same thing that we write printing 1 to 10 using that while loop, we'll do it using the do while loop. Okay, so let us do that so that you can understand well. So let me comment it out till here. Actually, let me comment it all the thing. So again, since we have to print 1 to 10, okay. So what is the first thing that we need to do? We need to initialize a variable. So I'll initialize my variable int I is equal to 1. Okay, correct. Now since we have to write do while loop, correct. So inside do, what I will do, I have to print the value, isn't it? So I will print this I. Since we have print that I, what is the next step? I have to print the next value. So in order to print the next value, I will increase the value of I by 1. So I have just increased the value of I by 1. So it has become what? If it is 1, it becomes 2, right? So what condition should I check here? I should be less than 11, correct? Till then, we have to keep on increasing the value of I by 1 and I have to keep on printing, correct? So this is what I have to do. So if I run it, just see the thing. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll again explain you the steps, right? How it is doing. So this was my step number 1, in which we initialized I is equal to 1. So this was my step number 2. This is going to run for once, that was for sure, I told you. But after this second step, whether it is going to run or not totally depends upon this condition. Okay, so if you check here, I is what now? 1. And when I increase the value of I, it becomes 2. Correct. If you check here, that what is I? It is 2. If 2 is less than 11, yes, it will return true. Correct. So this will go again here. And what is the value of I? 2. And it will again increase the value of I to 3. Correct. So this is how it keeps on repeating on and on and on and on. Okay. So I'll give you one more example, like why, whether it runs for once or not. Okay. So I have declared here I is equal to 14. Correct. Okay. So what is here? It is I is equal to 14. So it must print I here. That should be 14. And I plus plus will become 15. And here I, that is 15, is less than 11. That will return false. So if you see the output will run only for once. See, you have got here 14. Why? I'll tell you why. If you see, observe it carefully. We have initialized this I is equal to 14. And I told you that whether this condition is true or false doesn't matter. This statement which is written inside this block will run once for sure. Correct. So what it did, it print I. So what was I? I was 14. So we observe the value here as 14. Correct. And after that, the I's value was increased to 15. And if you go here, if you compare, what is I? I is 15. Is it less than 11? No, this will return me as false. Correct. So this condition while becomes false, that is why this statement ran only for once. Because this while becomes false and this entire loop breaks down. So this is do while loop. Do while loop is exit control loop. If you don't know what is going to happen next and you are sure that one of these statements should run at least once, you can use this do while loop. So this was all about do while loop. Correct. Now the final loop that is left with us today, that is for loop. So let us study about the for loop. For loop is the most used loop. Like whether you are programming, you are just beginning as programming or you are a seasoned programmer, doesn't matter. You are going to use it throughout your like coding life, the for loop. We use all the loops, but for loop is the most prevalent loop that you'll find in the a lot of code bases. Okay. So let us study about for loop. So what is for loop? Can I get a thumbs up from the people who are in the class, like they are following me? Can I get a thumbs up for the like while and do while loop? I'm just waiting and I'll move on. I'm just waiting. Okay, thank you, Manikant and Shad. Thank you so much. Okay, so let us move ahead to the final one, that is for loop. Thank you, people. I got it that you are following things. Okay, chalo. So let us learn the final loop, that is the for loop, and this is the most used loop. So let us understand the execution flow of this first. Once you understand the execution flow, right, you can write anything of the logic that you think in your mind using these things. So basically, for loop looks like this. Here, okay, let me show you first that how does it looks like. Okay, What's wrong with it? Acha, let me take this. Let me go here. So let me just comment this out as of now. Okay, just let me scroll it for. So, so here, hmm, not two. So if you see here, like for, if you observe it, like I have put here two semicolons, and after that there is a block. Correct. So what are this block for and what is this? Like we'll understand this. What is this? What is this? And what do we write here? And what comes here? Correct. So here we write the specifications and all the logics for the for loop. So let us understand it step by step. Hmm. So, so let me go to my notes. Okay. Okay. So if you remember that there were two semicolons, right? One is here, another one is here. So it basically gives you three spaces, right? We can write something and the body here. So what happens is, if you remember at the top of the previous two loops, we used to write like int I is equal to 1, correct? The one which we were starting to print. So this is my initialization section 1. So here we can initialize the variables, whatever variables we want, correct? The second one is the conditional expression. If you remember while, right, after this while we used to write the conditional that used to return us Boolean value. So this is my 2. Here we write the conditional expressions that return us true or false, correct? We used to write our condition check here, isn't it? And here we write the increment. So if you remember that we used to write I plus plus and all these statements. So all these statements comes here, and here goes your body. So these are the three sections in which we write, right? Like I'm not 100% correct about the things, because I'll tell you that there might be situation where you don't write always the increment or decrement here. Okay. So, but this is the general practice that people follow, that we here initialize things, here we check the conditional expressions, and here we increase or decrease the value, and here is the body, the rest of the statement that goes on. Okay. So let us understand the flow now, like what is the order of execution of all these components, like this, and this. Like in which order all these statements execute, like what is the interdependency between them. So let us understand that quickly. Okay, chalo. So first thing is here. The step number 1 is here, 1. So here we initialize the things. If you see here, like if you have to declare any variable, we declare it here. Okay. So before entering into this body, like this execution statement, a conditional expression check is here, whether it is true or false. So if the condition here, which is written here, returns true, then only we enter into this body. So this is my step number 1. This is my step number 2. And after that, we get into this body. So this becomes my step number 3. So once the body is executed, then we move on to here. So this is my step number 4. Correct. Then after this step number 4, after whatever increment, decrement operations, whatever statement you do here, again we move back to this conditional expression. So this is my step number 5 again. So if this conditional expression based on this increment and decrement, whatever you have done becomes true, it will check increment and decrement, whatever you've done. If this conditional expression is true, then only this again will come back here. Okay. Then again the entire loop flows. This initialization happens only for one time. Okay. So again repeat the flow. Don't worry. I'll repeat the flow once more so that you can understand that thing very clearly. I'll repeat it once again. Don't worry. So just mark my steps like how it is done. The first one is here. Here we initialize variable. So this is my step number 2. So once you initialize the variable, here we write some conditional expression that determines whether this body, whatever statement that you here written here is going to execute or not. So this is my step number 2, where we check the conditional expression, whether it is true or not. So if it is true, we get into this body. If it is not true, we just the loop breaks down. So this is my step number 2. At step number 3, whatever statement written here runs. And step number 4, here this is basically one more expression that is checked. So here basically we do is increment or decrement. So this is my step number 4. Okay, so once all the increment and decrement is done, so it again goes back to this expression. It again checks that whether the condition after performing this increment, decrement or whatever operation you have performed, whether the condition is satisfied or not. If it is satisfied, we again get back to this, or else our loop breaks down from here. So this is the flow that happens. This initialization happens only for once. Okay, so this was the basic flow for that. Okay, so let me again print that value 1 to 10 using the for loop, and again we'll discuss some of the things for this for loop in great detail, like what are the things, what are the variation that we can do here. So let me just print that value 1 to 10 and explain you the things. Okay, so if you remember that the first section was for initialization, correct? So what we will do is we'll initialize one of the variable here, int I is equal to 1, since we have to print it from here. Okay, so second step was here the conditional check. So what is my conditional check? I should be less than 11, correct? Because if I want to print that value of I must be less than 11. So what is the body that I am going to execute? I am going to execute print value of I, correct? And what rest operation I need to do? I need to increment the value of I. So I will put it here. So if you remember the flow, I'll again mark it here. What will happen? This will be my step number 1. This will be my step number 2, conditional check. This will be step number 4. And again, this will be step number 5. This is 6. And this is 7. And this will keep on moving and moving and moving until this condition becomes false. So we'll keep on printing this value of I until unless this condition becomes false. So let me quickly run this and let me show you the output. Okay. Okay, so let me quickly show you the output. Okay. If you see the output, you can see here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Correct? So I've got the correct output. So if you remember when I started iterative statement, I told you that all the loops can be used interdependently. Like whatever operation I can do using do while, I can do that using a while as well as using for. To see the example that I showed you, in most of the cases we can do it. Okay, if you try to modify your logic. So this is how for loops work. Now let me do a bit of the modification. What I will do is I will remove this I plus plus from here and I'll put I plus plus here. Now still my logic works perfectly fine. See, why? Because it's not mandatory to put any condition here. I can put any statement here. I'll show you one more thing. Let me write system dot out dot print and print ln, and let me write here is let me remove one of the bracket. Okay, my India is great, since it is like India is Great. Right? We are proud to be a part of this great nation. Okay. So let me just run it. See the logs. See what it prints. India is great. Why it printed India is great? Because this statement will run every time after running the body. Correct? So this is how it flows. You initialize things here, you go on with the body, then this operation runs, and this operation again redirects back you to here. Correct? If you remember the flow. So this is how it works. So let me go to the node section and I'll tell you about most of the things. So this initialization section, we generally perform initialization, and we can perform the initialization of multiple variables here, but they should be of the same data type. The initialization doesn't mean that we can initialize only one value. Here I can initialize more than two values. J is equal to 1 also, right? Here I can initialize other variables also, but that has to be of the type same as this. The first one, integer only. These all are of the same type. So this is my initialization section where I can initialize variables. Okay. We can initialize as many as variables, but that they all must be of the same data type. Okay. So I'll show you. I'll just give you some more detail about the rest of the thing. So if you see this conditional expression, the two, it is not mandatory that every time you have to declare it. So it has to be a Boolean expression or none. I'll show you. I will show you. What if I'll tell you that I want to run an infinite loop? I'll show you that. How can we go with an infinite loop? So I have not put anything here, right? I'll just do this. Now see the logs. See, it is running into an infinite loop, right? Just ruk jao, bhai. Okay, let me put it. So why did it happen? Because if you see the second statement, we haven't put anything here. So by default, it is treated as true. So that is why you got this so many numbers and it ran into an infinite loop. So it's not always mandatory that you put something here. You can bypass it, or else you can put a Boolean statement here. Okay, and if you know that I have already shown you that you can skip this. You can put any statement of your like system.out.println or anything as you wish of here. This is also not mandatory, but the general flow is something that we discussed very early, that we provide the initialization, we check the conditional expression, and then we put increment, decrement, and the rest of the body depends upon it. So this was all about the for loop. So let us quickly summarize the loops that we studied today. So we started with the switch case, and we again moved on to like while loop. We studied that in while loop there is a condition written here. If it is satisfied, we get into the logic that keeps on repeating. Else, this loop is not going to work. So this is basically an entry control loop where the condition is initially checked before getting into this repeated logic. Then we moved on to do while loop, where the statement just after the do runs once, that is for sure. But if it is going to run on and on, this while has to be satisfied. If this while returns false, this do statement will not run on and on. The next comes the for loop. So we studied in great detail about the for loop, where do we do initialize, we about the conditional expression, increment, decrement, and the body, and how these all things are interrelated with each other. And what are the things that we can play with, like we can do multiple initializations here. We can bypass this conditional expression. There is no need to write anything here. We can do all this operation that is done here at step number 4 in the body itself. So this is all we studied about for loop. Okay, so I have completed the loops, how to write it, and I will post some of the assignments at the end of this session that you have to complete. So can I get a thumbs up for the loops, that we successfully completed the loops? Like those who understood it can give me a thumbs up, or affirmative message that yes, we are good to go with the loops. Now you're confident with the logics of the loops, like how to write it and what should be the style of its body. Hmm. I'm waiting for that. Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. 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 So, okay, this is our day 4. Okay. So, it's already okay. Let me give you. Let us start with arrays then. Don't worry. So, shall I continue with arrays or shall I drop off? Uh, this is totally up to you. If you are ready to go with rest of the things, I can go on, or else we'll cover the rest of the things in the next class. Mm, I'm waiting for the reply. As the people respond, I'll go ahead with the same thing. Like if you could bear it, I'll go on, or else I'll stop here. Okay. So I've got one of the answer that please cover in next class. Okay. So what about others? Any more response, or else I should go with Nikita? Mm. No response? Means I should go with Nikita. So, okay, guys. So we'll catch you up. Sunday is a holiday, and I'm not sure about 15th August. So let us see how our moderator and the next of the people, the those who are, will decide that what about the next session when we are going to have it, and there is a high chance that the next sessions might extend like longer than 1 hour because we will be jumping into arrays and we'll start with the oops concept. So the next sessions after this class might extend for 1.5 hour or 1 hour 45 minutes. So be prepared for it. Meanwhile, for the weekend, I'll try to put some of the assignment that you have to complete it and submit it. Okay. So happy 75 Independence Day to you all in advance, and we love your country. Put your best for the upliftment of the country. Like we are the IT engineers, and keep on put innovating, keep on innovation, keep a quick eye on innovation, keep on developing things. Okay, because this is not just a simple warfare. This is a technical warfare that is going on in the entire world. And in the entire world, we are competing with the engineers all around the world, whether are Chinese, Koreans, right? We have to be good engineers, right? We are into a technical warfare also. This is just not a war with the with on the borders, but it's also an era of technological war. And as an like youth of the country, it is very important that we understand that, right? And most of the things in the country depend upon now on the technology. Okay, so that was a small message from my side. Like if you cannot join army, you are a part of the technology army, my friend. Okay, so all the best. Bye. We'll catch you very soon.